introduce, and he kindly volunteers to do this. He's been here nearly 3 years. In fact, he was here 3 weeks, and we had the call of a MFL subject inspection. So he said this would be a piece of cake. But no, I'm not sure he still feels that way at the moment. I'd also like to introduce Andy Swallow, who wants to say a few things beforehand. Well, I'll introduce you.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good to be back in Coventry, and particularly at a time when you might be picking up from the national press all kinds of statements from HMI about inspecting teaching and learning, particularly Mark Cladingbowl. Remember that name, senior HMI in Ofsted, talking about the future of inspections, how they're going to certainly change within the next 12 to 18 months. National elections, of course, next year. All the Ofsted contracts next year coming to an end. So when Cladingbowl talks over the weekend about not mentioning lessons anymore, which I think, certainly in the circles that I've been operating in, certainly over the last five years or so, that's become the norm. We're not looking at lessons, we're looking at learning experiences. Then certainly that's going to be a goer. Of course, for a while now we've been talking about no preconceived ideas about what the teaching might look like. So tonight I'm expecting nothing in terms of the teaching. I'm just focused on the learning. I'm just focused on the extent to which children are quite clearly having to think, are quite clearly having to use, on this occasion, French for practical communication and change. After a series of episodes, which I think tonight probably last around about half an hour or so, what's changed by how much for how many, as a result, obviously, of the teaching. And who knows, ladies and gentlemen, if Mark Cladingbowl's messages over the weekend come to fruition in the next 12 to 18 months, I think certainly we won't be grading teaching and behaviour and safety and achievement in visits to classrooms anymore in the future. We'll be talking about strengths, we'll be talking about areas for improvement. We'll certainly be grading teaching overall and behaviour and safety and achievement in schools, but I think we shall move away and that might be a good idea from this obsession with numbers in minute slots like we're seeing tonight. So tonight we're going to major on effectiveness. We're going to talk through the episodes in the learning. We're going to think about every time we talk about teaching, what impact is it having on 20 students or however many students we've got this evening. And by the end of our discussions, because I invite you to interact with me, we'll link all those episodes together and think about what's changed, for how many, and by how much, and therefore how effective the experience has been. Okay, so without any more of ado, we'll hand over to Matthew and year 8.
Yes.
Thank you.
Just before we get started, I know some people have come in and run out of packs. If any of the Whitley people have got any packs, they could do one between two, because we can obviously get you guys copies.
Alors, bonjour tout le monde, écoutez et regardez-moi. Ok, aujourd'hui, on va faire quelque chose sur les parties du corps. Les parties du corps, la tête, les doigts, la jambe, les épaules, les parties du corps et aussi le passé. Le passé et les blessures. Par exemple, quelque chose fait mal à la jambe. Quelque chose fait mal à la main, les blessures. Ok? Regardez maintenant, regardez le tableau. Regardez le tableau. Ok? Alors, pour bien commencer, aujourd'hui, on va faire une activité de parler. Une activité de parler. Alors, Monsieur Sam, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire? Une activité de parler. Qu'est-ce qu'on va faire, monsieur? Une activité de parler. Voilà, très bien, monsieur, excellent. Ok, je vous explique en anglais. So, what we will do with this particular activity is we are going, or you are going to try and guess what combination of those three I have in my head. Now, I have put together a combination of one from each column in my head to give you an injury in the past which happened for a reason at the Battle of Normandy. What you must do on your tables is work together with your mini whiteboard, and you are to write down the combination that you think, and all of them work together. All of those will work together. So you could put anything together there. So you could say, il s'est blessé à la cheville suite de trébuchet. That would work. So any of those you want to put together. What you must do is think and write your first version down. When I then go to the first table, you are going to tell me what you think I've got in my head. I will tell you how many of those you've got right. So I may go, if you've got one of them right, un. If you've got two of them right, deux. If you've got all three of them right, it was the shortest game in history. Okay, so three. Okay, trois. And then we play again. If I say zéro, then you know it's none of them. If I say un, then you need to try and work out which one of those it is by actively listening to the next tables and what they come up with. Okay, so you need to listen and work together to make sure that you get to what's in my head. Now, who's got the red straw? Who's got the red straws? Okay, red straw people, you are my scribes. Okay, you are writing, my red straw people. Who's got yellow straws and green straws? You will need to be looking at the columns and listening out for what's already been said and what you think it can or can't be. So those of you with the yellow and green straws are working that out. The red straw person, you also have a challenge. You will be doing the speaking, parler, for your table. How can you help with your speaking? What's on your table underneath your mini whiteboards? How can you help your speaking? How can you help your speaking? Kira? You can use the phonetics. How can we use phonetics in French to help us? How can we use that? So if I just hold this one up. How can we use our phonetics to help us in French? What do we look for to pronounce French correctly? What do we look for? Yes, Omar? Good lad. We use the separate sounds in the phonetics. What's this all about? Why am I telling you to be careful? What can you not do? Lewis? And where? At what part of a French word? At the end. Good lad. So at the end of a French word, you can pronounce the letters at the end that appear in the word careful. If they're not, they are silent. So we've got no dodgy who. Who's our dodgy people that we don't like? Who dodgy who? Dodgy Les and his brother. Who's the other one? Dodgy Les and Des. Les and Des. Okay, you need to make sure that Les and Des aren't out and about. So no dodgy Les and Des because there's no S in careful. So be careful when you make those pronunciations. Okay? Right. Allez, écrivez, devinez.
If that one is wrong, we'll choose your one.
That's it. Okay. So we point à la cheville. Cheville. You can remember. It's entre la cheville et entre la jambe, entre le pied. Et entre la jambe, le pied, la cheville. Voilà.
La jambe, le pied, la cheville.
Voilà. Body part. What's going on in the third part? How it injures. So that puts back into obviously the genitals and how severe it is back in the knee. So each unit now does because we've been trying to decide which one we're trying to work out which one it can be. Each of you, as he's writing and he's saying, you think, right, could it be if I say Ilamad will do have this individual right at the circle, and you know it's not Ilamad, it's not going to do it.
Ok, merci tout le monde. Écoutez bien. Alors, j'aimerais bien commencer le jeu. Alors, c'est parti. Je vais commencer avec la table de... Je commence avec la table de Charlie. Alors, monsieur, vas-y. Alors, vous avez un point. Un point. Ensuite, je choisis la table de Loken. Ok, alors je choisis un point. Alors, changez. Maintenant, changez. Il a mal au dos, suite de trébuchet. Encore un point. Ok? Maintenant, reformer, changer. Okay? La table de Ella. J'écoute. C'est Monsieur Sam. Suite de trébuche. I1, trébuche. Trébuche. L, trébuchet. Alors, suite de trébuchet. Alors, il a mal à la cheville, suite de trébuchet. Alors, vous avez 2 points, 2 points, 2 points. Il a mal à la cheville, suite de trébuchet. Alors, maintenant, je vais à la table de calme. Il s'est blessé. Vas-y. Continue. 0. 0. 0. Je suis désolé. 0. La table de Louise. Suite de trêve, touche et trébuchet. Excellent. Alors, il a mal au dos suite de trébuchet. Encore 2 points. 2 points. 2 points. Alors maintenant, pensez et reformez. So think through now and think and change.
So you've got it, yeah, go for the bottom.
I think it's that one.
Do you think anything else different? Or did anyone see
I think it's Ilmal. I'm sure it's Ilmal because everyone said it and they've got at least one right.
Yeah.
So,
But then we've got
Yeah, we'll just leave it as that.
Ilmal. We'll make sure we know it's ill mal.
Do everyone agree?
So should we use the... Wait. Do that and then...
Bless it. Oh, no one said that the bottom in the middle.
Of course, do not...
It kind of depends on whether you think it'll work or not. I reckon we'll get Trez Boys this time. Just put it out there. we get what? I reckon we'll get all three right. So. Just read it out. Yeah, it's Ilamal, yeah. Yeah, but it's... Yeah, so it's all done. It's not. Go on then, put it down. No, I thought what Sam was trying to say was...
Alors, écoutez, deuxième fois, deuxième chance. Alors, maintenant, je vais encore à la table de Charlie. Maintenant, Monsieur Charlie, vas-y.
Il se blessait à la cheville suite de cheville.
Ah, je pense que monsieur, tu as gagné. Vous avez gagné. Excellent. Oui, 3 points. OK? Il s'est blessé à la cheville suite de trébuchet. Alors, traduisez en anglais. In English, Charlie. What's he done? Il s'est blessé. He's what? What's he done à la cheville? Do you reckon he's done to himself?
Hurt his foot.
La cheville.
Ankle.
Okay, so he's, what is ankle? Blessé. Remember blessure?
Injured.
Injured. He's injured his ankle, good lad. How? Suite de trébuchet.
Tripped over.
Because he tripped over, following it. Okay? He tripped over. Très très bien. Ok, bien. Alors, maintenant, on va faire les objectifs. On va faire les objectifs. Ok. Ouvrez les cahiers. Ouvrez les cahiers. Ok. Ouvrez les cahiers. Écrivez la date. C'est le 12 mars. Le 12 mars. Écrivez la date. Ok. Right, now, on your board here you have got a little triangle. Now it's very difficult for those of you with the red straw perhaps to see, that says evaluate. What you've got there is a coloured straw, so just hold up your straws for me please. Okay, hold up your straws. Well done. So you've all got different coloured straws, and what I want you to do is I want you to look at your pyramid there. So if you have a green straw, I want you to look at what I wrote over here, look, and I want you to decide how you think you will best learn in this body parts and past tense if you have to use the word understand or describe or explain. If you've got a yellow straw, I want you to decide, well, how could I use the word apply? And if I've got a red straw, how could I write myself an outcome that's got the word evaluating? But then, there's another little challenge down the bottom, look. Okay? Why have I put aspirational in there? Why have I put aspirational in here? Callum? It's our literacy word of the week. So we need to have an aspiration. And what does having an aspiration mean? What does having an aspiration mean, Riley? Good lad. You're going to aim to go that little bit higher. So I want you to then use the next one up. So if you've got a green straw, don't just say, understand these things. I want to apply them. Likewise, if you've got a yellow straw, I don't just want to apply them, I want to analyse them. And if I don't, red straw, just evaluate it, I want to create something. Okay? Right, I'll come to the tables. Allez-y. Écrivez.
Analyse the text.
So I describe and explain the past tense with body parts, okay, in French, remember. And what's your next thing? Then to apply it. No, in French, not in French. And then what are you going to do with it next? You're going to apply it, aren't you? So you're going to do some work here, look.
And then I'm going to
Apply your knowledge, okay?
I'm going to apply past tense to body parts you can injure.
Well done.
Knowledge.
L-D-E-G.
Yeah, L-E-D-G-E.
L-E-D-G-E.
G-E.
Yeah, done. Check my sentence out.
And you've got your shirt and your back. Yeah, put them to both in last one. Good, well done. I'm going to mark this as level, Taylor.
Ok, alors écoutez bien. J'aimerais bien écouter les objectifs. J'aimerais bien écouter les objectifs. Alors, Taylor, décris-moi ton objectif, s'il te plaît.
I want to apply body parts to make a paragraph about how someone injured themselves.
Très bien, merci beaucoup. Monsieur Loken, vas-y, ton objectif?
To evaluate the injuries in the past tense reflecting accidents and to create my version of this again.
Super bien, très bien, monsieur. Mademoiselle Grace, vas-y.
I'm going to apply past tense to injuries which may potentially cause damage to the body.
Ah, c'est très bien, super, excellent. Mademoiselle Émilie, vas-y.
To apply injuries in the past tense and to analyse where the injuries are of the body.
Super intéressant, très bien, merci beaucoup. Et Mademoiselle Chelsea?
To analyse my injury and add more detail, and then I will apply my French and language.
C'est super bien, très intéressant. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Ok. Alors, maintenant, on va appliquer les objectifs. So, we're going to do something with your objectives. Let's look at this. Okay, anybody recognize this man? Who does he look like? Or what does he look like? Say what you see. Does he look like Callum? Soldier?
With my gun.
With a gun, okay. Soldier with a gun. Anybody know particularly where he's from? Anyone know which particular film? Something to do with the Battle of Normandy? Saving Private Ryan, that's right, Louise. Okay, right, what I'd like you to do is you're going to watch this clip, okay? You're going to watch this clip. And whilst you're watching this clip, I would like you to just take from your packs, you've got these, okay? Okay, you've got this. So just have that in front of you. Okay, so take that and put that in front of you. What you will see, okay, thank you, miss. What you will then see is you are going to, well, you tell me, what are you going to look for connected to your learning outcomes for this soldier? What's going to happen, do you think, in this clip? What's going to happen, Chloe? He might tell us himself, or what might we see to reflect that? How he got injured. So we're going to see maybe what happened, how he got injured. Okay? So that's all connected to what? What's all that connected to, which we're learning about today? What's that connected to? We've said what happened, how it happened. So what will that allow us to do in French in a minute, Chelsea? To write down what the injury was, and as you quite rightly said there, I think it was Taylor, how it happened. Okay? Okay. Regardez le vidéo. Okay. Pauvre Captain Miller. Okay, so not looking too good. What we are going to do now is we're going to look with your slides at what has happened to Captain Miller. Okay? Alors, qu'est-ce qui ne va pas avec Captain Miller? Qu'est-ce qui ne va pas? You have got on your tables a pack which contains these shapes. Okay? I want you to take the shapes. When I come to your tables, I will tell you which shapes to take. And there will be a shape in English and a blank shape that you are going to put on here as a team together. But what you must write on your little shape must be in French to reflect what we did in the activate activity at the beginning. So you need to think about body parts, injuries, how they happened. Okay? Looking at Captain Miller, he's got a very nasty looking hand there. Okay? Lots of things not very well about him. So you need to use these shapes, look what's written in English on the shape, and then reflect that in French using what we have learnt so far today. Okay? To create a paragraph in French about what happened, okay, to Captain Miller. So if you want to take out, people with the red straws, could you please take out the packs for me? Okay, and get shapes out. Has anybody got any questions? And what I would like the person with the red straws to do is I would like you to now distribute to the people on your table two shapes. One that's got something in English, one which is something black. Okay, one something in English, one something black. And then I will come to your table and I will have a conversation with you as to why you've done this. Okay? And then you start to work together to think about what you're going to write about what's just happened to Captain Miller. Has anybody got any questions before I come to your chairs? Red straw people, please take control of giving out your stickers. Okay? Alors, allez-y, c'est parti.
I saw him.
You don't have anything? Or is it just blank?
It's blank because we need write
Okay.
French words. Yeah, on French words.
That one
That's head, isn't it? I've got here.
His hand. He hurt. Yeah, he hurt his hand. He has pain. Where did he get shot?
In his chest.
Did he? He has
But you have to
pain.
know what it is. I saw him fall to the floor.
So to be right,
Yeah, so you can kind of tell, like, he's been shot, because, as you've seen in the clip, how, like, the German guy just shot him. Yeah, I think, like, look, when he puts he hurt, someone's going to come over and tell us, like, where to put it.
oh, okay.
Which obvious where to put it. Yeah, you know, someone's going to come over.
He was over a gas mask. Quite good.
I saw him walk to the lodge. That's why
What to this definitely more dramatic.
he hurt his arm. No, his hand.
Yeah, I reckon he has pain in his chest or his hand.
He hurt his
So, this is your learning journey up here. So you start with he has pain, yeah? Okay? So if you look here, this is where it sort of follows a pattern on here as well. So who's got the pain one? Oh, he's got pain in. Who's got the square? Have you dished them out yet? Okay? Okay? So if you think about where you're going to put this, how do you say he's got pain? Where would you say he's got pain in? Stomach. So il a mal, and then you find the word for stomach. Okay? And make sure you put on the ventre, yeah? Then you go through to here and you say, right, okay, so he's really hurt, so it's this one down. So that one. Yeah. Then he's injured, we come up to here, and we change the body part each time. What's this last one here then? I saw him. I saw him what? What happened to him? I saw him shot. Okay, so you can't remember the word got in the dictionary. Just have a look for shot, or the verb to shoot in the dictionary. Yeah, remember it's on here, it's on the handout. Je l'ai vu. Très bien.
Right,
on that and then put it on there.
Oh, right.
Because it's, I think the stickers. Yeah, the stickers. Yeah, stick them on. Yeah. Because yeah. So,
what about this one? So you saw him what?
saw him shot.
Shot.
It says shoot.
You have a look.
Like, it starts with this one here. He has
That's pain.
She shot
and
him
it
in
goes
the
to
leg.
her.
He shot himself in the head. He was shot by terrorists. The film was shot. What? It says it on the. I'm just reading what it says.
I know it's J, I don't know. And then him is here, isn't it? No, that's
Him is.
E-I-L-L-E, isn't it?
Oh, but where's the shoulders?
Shoulder is out.
No.
Is shoulder is.
What?
Oh, that's so you're speaking.
Her. Blessing.
Yeah, that's what locals speak. And then you're speaking.
Might be il blessé.
How do you say him? Blessa.
Il.
That's
Here, look in the dictionary because
Oh, still.
all I know, yeah, is. Il, so. Il blessé. Mine's il blessé.
Okay.
In and now.
Right. Right. If I pick on you, just have a look at that one, yeah? Okay. Because that one's basically saying he's had an accident. He's injured his arm. He's also injured his knee. Okay. And then you just change that to genou. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Matthew. I think Mr. Ansola just said that's probably about the time an inspector would be in. So if we could have a round of applause, please.
Sort of episodes, if you want, in this experience, I think. I'll go through them just so that we establish content, and then let's sort of think about each of the episodes and share with me your thoughts as well, because I don't just want to impose my thinking on you. Share with me your thoughts in terms of effectiveness, and then let's see if we can stitch the episodes together, and as we said earlier on, in terms of children's thinking, children's linguistic development at this moment in time. And back to Mark Claddenbull, we're not talking about lessons, we're talking about experiences, and 30 minutes, 33 in this instance, is a good amount of time for a learning experience. So let's think about, where were we at the beginning, where are we momentarily after 33 minutes, and what's the change, and for how many? And we've got 21, haven't we? 21 young people. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the sort of 8 episodes in my mind. You might have 6, 7, 9. It doesn't really matter, does it? As long as we're seeing the right things. So, opening sort of 3 minutes or so, we set the tone right from the word go. We've got lots of French being used in terms of establishing what's going to be required from the students. Broad learning outcomes. They're on the IWB in English anyway. We've got that opportunity about 3 minutes or so to introduce the Qu'est-ce qui ne va pas session, where, if you remember, we've got jumbled sentences, 3 jumbled sentences, which can actually go together in any order. I don't know if I'm talking to an audience of linguists here, forgive me if I am. I'm a modern linguist just by chance tonight. So for non-linguists anyway, there's no right or wrong there, but an opportunity in the next 4 minutes or so for students to look at those sentences, manipulate them, put them together in as many different ways as they want. Followed by a bit of Q&A around the groups in terms of individual spokespeople reading out the sentence that they put together in the shape, of course, of the game. We go back to that for another 2 or 3 minutes for them to change the sentences. We have a little bit more Q&A follow-up, not a great deal, because by that time we get one group that's come up with all of the 3 sentences that were in the teacher's mind, game over, etc. We've then got about an 8-minute session where children are devising their personal learning outcomes. If you recall the pyramid with the straws. We've got about 4 minutes then where we've got the picture from of Private Ryan, we've got the DVD clip, and we've got the introduction to the final episode, which we watch for around about 5 minutes or so, clearly nowhere near finished, where children have got different shapes, different backgrounds, and are asked to begin to think about some of that prior language that they've been cycling and to come up with appropriate sentences in the past tense, largely to translate the stems of the shapes which are in English, which they'll be able to hopefully use to talk about that DVD clip. That's just the content, yeah? Have we all been in the same session? Yeah. That sounds familiar? Great. Okay, let's think about effectiveness then, ladies and gentlemen. You know, share with me with your thoughts. Feel free, and I'll give you the wisdom of my thinking as well. But certainly, in terms of, you know, no preconceived ideas. No preconceived ideas, so we're not going to be sort of saying, well, I wouldn't have done it that way, I would have done it. Well, he might have, well, I really like that, without backing it up in terms of impact on thinking and change. So none of those things. We're just looking at what actually happened and how it's leading to linguistic progression. So first 3 minutes, if you recall, we've got class coming in. How they're coming in tells us an awful lot. It's a bit false, of course, in this scenario here, but how quickly they get settled. Learning objective, broad context shared in French, backing in English, bit of mime and gesture. Just that first 2-3 minutes as a start to learning. Not looking for any starters anymore, not looking for any necessary plenaries, not interested in 3-part lessons, not interested in anything. Only children thinking and making progress. So as a start to learning, just that first 2-3 minutes before anything else, how effective did you think it was? Somebody just get the ball rolling, then we'll... you can't be wrong, I'm not going to say wrong, you know, that's all, yeah.
I thought it was very effective.
Go on.
Seen straight away as to what they were going to be studying.
Yeah.
Yes, it was in English, but it was pretty obvious as well. The sort of brief explanation from the teacher in target language.
Okay, okay. So as a start lesson, they knew they were in a French lesson, and they were clued in, you reckon? Okay, okay. Any other thoughts, ladies and gentlemen? Just that first 2-3 minutes is a start to learn. Yeah.
It hit nicely to what they were doing in the lesson before, so it was really clear that they were bringing their prior learning with them, and he made those links really clear to the students as well. So when he was explaining what they were going to do, he was talking about things they did previously.
Yes, and yeah, okay. Any other thoughts, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah.
He gave them linguistically as well, so they obviously English and French and that's, but they have to start thinking immediately in French.
Yeah, okay, nice point, yeah. We know we're in a French context, we know we're in a French ambiance. Yeah, there's some English up there, but we're here in French, so whether we've been in PE, whether we've been in technology or whatever, it's pretty clear now where we are and what's expected. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll take that on board. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen? First 2-3 minutes. Yeah.
I thought the use of mime when some of the kids didn't understand was really effective to help them understand the terminology that was going to be used throughout. So when one kid didn't understand parlay, you doing that.
And, you know, these are old-fashioned techniques, but they're absolutely worth thousands of pounds, aren't they, modern linguists? There's nothing that we can't do with visuals, with mime, with gesture, to support as much target language as possible in learning experiences. We're not looking for 100% necessarily, but yeah, we want to see as much target language as possible, because that adds the challenge quite clearly, and that puts you know, the linguistic experience really firmly on the table. Yeah, I mean, in the first instance, I'd agree with all of those things. I thought it was a smart start to learning. Certainly in terms of establishing ambiance. Yeah, we've got the English, but that's fine. They're listening to French. I think most of them actually, and I always try particularly in scenarios where, you know, where children work in rows. Not that I've got any preconceived ideas about how children should work, but when children work in rows and you get seated, you know, there's the chair at the back of the classroom or learning space. My heart always sinks because got to see children's eyes, got to see children's faces, because you can learn so much, can't you, with how they're connecting and you know what might be going on in their minds. So you'll see me shuffling to the front all the time, and certainly I think a lot of the eyes here are not really on the IWB but on the teacher. So there's the, you know, I mean, all right, there's the English there, but that's the backup. And certainly I think at that point it's brief, it's to the point, it's setting the context, it's linking to prior learning, and we know we're in a French lesson. Yeah. Okay. What about the qu'est-ce qui ne va pas? If we take the 3 minutes which it takes to introduce, and then the 4 minutes that they've got on their tables to discuss and largely come up with their choice of sentences on whiteboards, and then the sort of 2 minutes or so Q&A where spokespeople are reading out their chosen sentence or sentences. So around about 9-10 minutes there, because we go back into the activity, of course, and have a second bite at it. Effectiveness, yeah. Right. Right. Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I can't tell from where I am, but by the end of that part, did they know what any of those words, apart from the correct answers, did they know what the other sentences meant?
That's a good question. We'll come back to that in a second or two. Did they actually know what the French meant? And how do we know that they knew what the French meant? Were they new sentences? Were they recital language? We're unclear about that aspect. But we'll come back to the question that you raised there. Interesting question. Yeah, effectiveness. Any other comments, ladies and gentlemen, about this sort of 10 minutes where we are putting together our sentences in whichever way we want, having to listen to other people's sentences, and keep working at recycling this language until we hit on the 3 sentences that the teacher's got in his head. Anything other issue? Yeah.
I think it was really effective because there were no wrong answers.
There weren't.
Therefore, the students are going to be confident to take a risk perhaps and to try things out and to see what's what.
Okay.
Know that they will always get some positive feedback from that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. There are no right or wrong answers because all of the stems can be linked with the remainder of the parts of the sentence, so they're not going to trip up, and they're getting positive feedback, as you say. Yeah, okay. Any other thoughts? Yes?
I think the main purpose of that activity was to engage the students in
Yeah.
what happen later on. Because actually, you could miss all of that out and go straight into some writing some sentences about what's happened, injuries in the past. And you probably would get as good an outcome.
Yeah.
But that's really an engaging task. You know, it's a mystery, isn't it? It's a solving, it's like a Cluedo or a mastermind type thing. And you can use that sort of activity in a lot of different subjects to engage students in what's going on later on.
Okay, thank you. Just take 2 more points and then I'll give you my sort of thoughts and we'll try and link all that together because major chunk of the experience here, we've got about 1/3 of the learning time here. So a gentleman at the back and I think a lady just in front. Yeah.
Just watching it, I thought it was quite open-ended. It's one of those things that could be extended in many different ways. So, for example, students, if they start to build sentences together, they might then start to write out 3, 4, 5, 6 different options that could be occurring. And then also, if the map is moving around as it was, he could have said, do we know what those are in English? Can we translate them back? So there was lots of opportunities.
Okay. The key question is, did we see any? But I take your point, yes. And a lady at the front, and then we'll move on perhaps, yeah.
I just wondered if there might be a way to get more of them involved.
Right. Well, we've got to be watching this, haven't we? Because we've got 5 groups and we've got 21 children, and I've obviously got, I'm privileged in the fact that I can move around and I can listen to talk, but we've got to be keeping our eyes on how many are involved, how many are contributing to recycling this information, and whether, you know, guard against, obviously, the dominant pair or the dominant individual that might be doing it on behalf of the others. We'll come back to that one in a moment or two. Okay. Thank you for that, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, key language here, quite clearly, because we know from the outcomes shared that we're going to be operating in the past tense. We know we're going to be talking about injuries, and so we've got 3 different opportunities of introducing injury. I take on board what you're saying about it's a safe activity, but it is open-ended. So as an activity to recycle, as I said, and to, I guess, take risks in inverted commas within a very secure structure, because you can't get it wrong. I think it was a useful activity. I'm looking at the time and wondering how long it needs to go on. I think there was some confusion at the beginning in terms of students putting one sentence together or realising they could actually put a number together. But certainly after that 10 minutes and going back into for another 2 or 3 minutes, I think we didn't have too many, if any, dominant individuals and pairs on tables. Thought most of the students were contributing to recycling and, moving around the sentence structures and getting themselves familiarised with what I guess was largely new idiom, largely new lexis, and it's a case of after that, how are we going to move forwards? Because by this time we're into around about 15 minutes of learning time, and by now, no rule of thumb or anything, but 15, 16 minutes, then we'd be expecting learners to start to branch out and either manipulate, add, develop, or whatever. But certainly we've got enthused learners. And I think at this point, we've still got challenged learners. And ladies and gentlemen, no preconceived ideas about pedagogy anymore, or techniques anymore, or strategies anymore. But believe me, in all the conversations I've had over the last 21 years, I think, of inspecting schools, and certainly conversations I have with people like you and fellow inspectors in schools now, if we've got interested, motivated, enthused, stimulated learners, then we've got learners who are going to buy in for the distance. And if we've got learners, no matter whether they're high or low, or attainers or children with specific needs, if we've got challenged learners, then not only are we going to get that buy-in, but we're going to get depth as well as distance. And that's really what we're looking for, aren't we, in terms of building thinking, learning experience, children really being challenged, being really stretched to full potential, but at the same time, enjoying it. And certainly after the first 14, 15 minutes, I think we're at that stage. Let's see what happens next then. Let's see what happens, how we unpick the learning in the next 18 minutes or so. And the almost half of this next phase in the learning is about the triangle and about the personal learning outcomes. Effectiveness in terms of developing now where we've got to linguistically. What do we think? Remember the straws, different coloured straws, the triangle, children devising their own personal learning outcomes. Any thoughts? Yeah. Right. Okay, well they were certainly coming up with different outcomes for themselves. Yeah. Any other thoughts, ladies and gentlemen? Effective? in terms of the contribution to linguistic development? Pregnant pause. I'm not, yeah.
I like the fact that the students took ownership of their own outcomes.
Yeah.
And that they were encouraged to aspire. I wasn't altogether convinced that they were able to articulate them very well and they would fully understand what was expected of them. And that we would actually see different levels of language ability having been developed, if you like, in the lesson.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm not really sure about this 8 minutes. I really have to say, children are being invited certainly to set individual learning outcomes. Some are finding it more of a challenge than others to use the language. I don't know what I don't know. So through their talk, I'm not hearing necessarily an understanding of, you know, what evaluate might mean as opposed to what understand might mean. And of course, all of the individual outcomes, and there must be a good, if we look back at the writing, 21 children, there must be at least sort of 8 or 9 different outcomes there, will then have to be met rather, by the, you know, experiences that then follow. Personally, I didn't think it developed the linguistic experience at all, and I just thought it was a long time, as we've got children now bought into the language, recycling previously unknown language, beginning to feel confident, getting their tongues round it, seeing how it worked. I just thought it was an unnecessary interlude, really. And looking at, as I say, the complexity of some of the outcomes that children were coming up with, well, it's going to take certainly shaping on the hoof significantly some of the material and experience as it unfolds to meet all those different personalised statements. But I didn't think it added anything. I'm looking at my watch. We're getting into nearly 25 minutes of the linguistic experience, and I'm really wanting to see now more of the foreign language, being extended, being used more independently, being applied or whatever. We move therefore into the clips. We've got the picture of the soldier. We've got the context, of course, for this whole episode of injuries, causes, body parts, past tense, framed in the Battle of Normandy. We've got the DVD clip, and we've got the introduction to the task. Then we'll finish off with that actual finale in terms of the 5 minutes or so that we saw in the task. Impact, effectiveness of this 4 minutes in terms of the picture, the DVD clip. Obviously, we need to introduce the task, but it's around about 4 minutes. What do we think? Any thoughts?
I thought it was very engaging and sort of made them look at something visual to demonstrate their sentences, and I don't think we quite saw enough of it develop because of the time sort of got cut off there. But they were starting to translate bits on the cards, and that would be an interesting activity, I think.
Well, let's not go on to the translating the bits on the cards yet. Let's just think about just those 4 minutes, Pin. So in terms of setting it in context, yes, I mean, it's obviously not adding anything linguistically again, but you think that's giving them sort of a sense of purpose and developing further interest.
Yeah, I think it makes languages interesting in a way that's sort of labelled using visual, isn't it? And so they were using sort of different skills within that lesson.
Well, we're just looking at that episode when they're doing nothing, simply but watching. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Well, it did, but we had the picture bit first, and then we did the instructions that followed, and the whole of that episode was 4 minutes. Yeah. Any other thoughts, ladies and gentlemen? Take the point there about, setting in context, providing a framework for linguistic development. and linking it back to the overall context for learning, which is the Battle of Normandy. Here's the thoughts. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, can't see it.
The way I see it, you put a picture up, even though a visual, think about it, there's no injury shown on the picture. It's given a visual to recommend the body parts where they can imagine. Very good imagination part.
How do we know it triggered anything? What did they do?
They were looking and watching that. Just scan the picture and they tried to scan that in the brain. What do you think? Because they knew they would be looking into thinking on body parts and and then the video part is brought down. It's a very short version for them to know the track things are important in the head and link them to the picture in 1 minute 6 seconds. These are the body parts where the injuries happen.
Okay. I mean, that they may have been doing that. We don't know they were doing it, but okay, yeah. I mean, it's 4 minutes. It's 4 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, but it's just adding to the previous 8 minutes. And I'm just getting a little bit concerned about linguistic development because all of these ideas are helpful, but the only thing the children now have done in almost 30 minutes linguistically is manipulate 3 jumbled sentences. And I'm just here, they actually understand those sentences because I'm still not sure whether they understand all of that language. And in fact, one boy, when he was asked to translate it, struggled a little bit with some of those verbs and nouns. So I'm desperately wanting them to do something with this language to show me what's going on in their minds. Because this is about learning, this is about thinking, and if children aren't speaking or doing, then it's really difficult to hypothesize what connections, what links are actually going on in their minds. I mean, it's framing the learning again. That's a good idea, but we really need to see more now of the foreign language being developed. And here's an opportunity, because we hand over the learning back to the students at this point, with a series of shapes where they have some stemmed English language, like, for example, he injured or he hurt. The children are invited to really go back to that language, that previous language. They've got access to dictionaries if they need it, but really they shouldn't need it, because if they've really got that previous language in their minds, they can use that initially, I think, to begin to come up with a description about the visual, the moving image. So the pièce de résistance, I guess, is the extent to which, and I take your point, more time, but we've been in this experience 33 minutes, and yes, it's not going to end after 33 minutes. It's not going to end today. It's not going to end tomorrow. It's just, learning goes on, doesn't it? But it's about maximising, obviously, opportunities and seeing, how much progression, how much change we can get given resource, given time, given expertise, and so forth. So, ladies and gentlemen, you had some idea, perhaps, of the writing that was emerging. You wouldn't be able to hear the talk, which obviously was in English. Any feel for what you saw in that sort of initial 5 minutes in terms of how children were getting to grips with the previous language, making links, and beginning, with confidence or not, to put together appropriate linguistic phrases. Any thoughts? Effectiveness of the first part of that experience that we saw? Did you see enough on the screens? Or could you read between the lines in terms of how the children were operating? Did any child write any French, did you think?
Not independent French. They used the French that was in front of them.
Okay, not independent, but...
It wasn't capitalised on.
Right, so you didn't feel that they used any independently, you didn't,
No.
they just used what was there kind of thing, okay. Any other thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, about what you were picking up, what you were seeing, or what you were putting together in terms of that first sort of 5 minutes of that? Right, yeah.
They seem to be waiting for a teacher to come round to explain, so this group over here, which I think was the last group we got to, didn't appear to actually be doing anything.
Okay.
They appeared to be holding the cut-out shapes.
Okay.
So I was just a bit concerned about whether they really understood what they were doing and could therefore get on. It seemed as though they were waiting for some instructions.
So your point is that there seemed to be a lot of waiting and didn't necessarily see a lot of activity, and therefore the thoughts in your mind, did they understand or not, or was it just that they weren't writing but they were talking about it and so forth? Okay, thank you for that. Any other thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, that were going through your minds at that point? No. Right, you were a bit unclear about what was... Yeah. Well, the shapes had stems on them, like, as I say, he injured or he hurt. Yeah. Yes, whether they've actually processed that vocabulary and can then reapply bits of it. That was the idea, I think, and the big question mark is, to what extent were they clear that that was expected of them, and could they do it? And quite clearly, we didn't see the end product, but we saw, you know, the start of that. Okay, nice point. Any other points that emerged from because in a way, this is a major part now of really the progression. So we've had a bit of a stutter, I feel, in terms of the learning outcomes, the personalised outcomes, and yeah, the DVD and the picture, which contextualise certainly does, but now we really are asking them to go back to that language initially to see whether it's internalised, whether it's absorbed, whether it's processed, and whether they can begin to translate the stem and continue it so that they can produce appropriate descriptions of the moving image. Yeah. Thank you for that. I mean, I have to say that I thought there was a lot of confusion. Teacher is moving around quite swiftly. I feel really to re-explain what needs to be done, because most of the children were confused. Some resorted to dictionaries, which is always a nice strategy, but not when you're using it to try and look up words that perhaps you ought to have processed had the learning been more secure earlier on. But some tables had just stopped because they just couldn't really piece together what was expected of them and were waiting for that backup support. I think a couple of individuals had written something, perhaps the beginning of a sentence, but the vast majority were not really able to connect back to that previous language and actually begin confidently. I say begin, not the final episode, but begin confidently to write sentences based on that processing that would describe the DVD clip. So in terms of the distance, in 33 minutes, we've certainly acquainted them with new language. I think it's new language. I'm not certain, because it's not tested, how many are confident with all of the meaning of that language, And in 33 minutes, in terms of being able to begin to use it productively, we're not there. We really aren't there. And so this is certainly an experience that I would probably want to go back to. You know, these days in inspection work, but forget inspections, because we're not talking about inspections per se, we're talking about developing teaching and learning in schools. Anything goes. You know, 20 odd years ago we were sitting in a lesson for an hour, we're going into parts of lessons, and sometimes these days I find myself going in for the first 10 minutes and then coming back in 20 minutes time and looking at the last 10 minutes kind of thing to see how it's unfolding. And I think in this particular instance, I'd want to give these children a bit of time and come back a bit later to see what was emerging, because I've just not seen enough in nearly 35 minutes of linguistic development. And at times I just feel, and the relationships, the ambience in this environment here are really strong. It's telling us a lot about, typically, teachers' expectations, teachers' values, teachers' routines, children's expectations of themselves, the routines, because there is an energy here. We've got a group here who really want to learn, and a teacher here who's really, I think, you know, in touch with his learners. But I just feel that some of these experiences are a little overcomplicated and a little over-confusing at the expense of really developing simply you know, a series of vocabulary or a range of lexis and idiom, and getting children to process, absorb it, and use it in a limited way, certainly at first of all, as quickly as possible. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you found that interesting. And once again, can you put your hands together for Matthew and Joe?